So one of the most anticipated games maybe of all time was Cyberpunk 2077, and we all know what happened at its release. It was critically panned as being a failure. It had numerous issues, specifically on last-gen hardware like PS4 and Xbox One. It just seemed like a game that was too ambitious for those consoles, quite honestly. But today, we're well over a year past the release of the new consoles, and we've all recently got our hands on the next-gen update for Cyberpunk 2077, and that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in today's video, so let's get started. So I just want to say up front that I really enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that it's probably my favorite RPG since Skyrim. And it's important to note that I'm saying this as someone who didn't have too many problems with the game at launch. I mean, I played it on the Series X, so it was just the Xbox One X version at 60 FPS. I know people often complained about the drops below 60, but if they were there, then I didn't experience them at all thanks to VRR. Well, I guess the better way to word that would be that I probably experienced tons of drops below 60 FPS, but I probably just never noticed them thanks to VRR. But the point I'm trying to make is that I didn't really have any of the performance issues that people were complaining about, and outside of a few bugs here and there, I didn't really have any problems at all. But even then, that's just something I expect from big open world RPGs. I mean, I didn't experience any more bugs with this game at launch than I did with Assassin's Creed Valhalla at its launch on Series X. So it wasn't until I really looked at some gameplay footage of Cyberpunk 2077 on last-gen consoles that made me understand why people were so upset at this game. But regardless of my excellent experiences with the game, it remains the fact that the game was plagued with issues for the general public of gamers, even if they were on next-gen consoles like I was. I mean, when you think back on it, Sony delisted that game from their marketplace. It was impossible to buy that game digitally on Sony's platforms, the PS4 or the PS5. They just didn't allow it. But with the release of last week's patch 1.5 for Cyberpunk, I think we're getting closer to what I can only assume was the real vision that CDPR had for this game at its launch. I think I want to first talk about the biggest part of this patch, and that's going to be the fact that it includes full support for next-gen consoles like Xbox Series X and S as well as PS5. So off the bat, I'll start with Series X and PS5, which both offer two different graphical modes, performance and ray tracing. Now for me personally, the ray tracing mode is just pretty useless. I honestly think it's there just so they can say, hey, technically we have ray tracing in the game on consoles, isn't that cool? And sure, ray tracing sounds nice, and when implemented to its max potential, it can really be a visual feast. But in Cyberpunk, the only things that are ray traced on consoles are shadows. So it's really not something you're going to notice unless you're actively going out of your way to notice it, and you're certainly not going to notice it in the middle of real gameplay. Not to mention the fact that it comes at the cost of playing at 30 FPS now. So if you're on either of these consoles, I think performance mode is the best way to go. It looks 99% identical to the other mode, except it runs at double the FPS at 60 FPS. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that performance mode gets you a higher resolution picture because in the patch notes, I'm pretty sure that they mentioned that performance mode is dynamic 4K on both PS5 and Series X, and quality mode is a dynamic 1440p, or in this case ray tracing mode, I guess I should call it. I actually even think they've made the HDR look better than it previously did. I mean, either that or my eyes are playing tricks on me. It's not the best HDR I've ever seen, but it definitely seems like a step up from where it was at launch. But I think it's also worth talking about the Xbox Series S version of the game. Now this is probably the least attractive way to play the next-gen version of this game as of this very second, considering that the game is locked to 30 FPS with no other graphical options. It's basically the performance modes from the PS5 and Series X brought down to 30 FPS. However, it is worth noting that CDPR has stated that they are working on getting 60 FPS on the Series S. And I think that the next-gen update is probably the sexiest thing in regards to patch 1.5, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the other additions that came along with this update, because there was plenty that was added outside of graphical and performance improvements. I think the biggest thing is that now we have the ability to purchase different apartments in our playthroughs as opposed to having to stick with the same base apartment that we have at the beginning of the game. But you've also got new weapon accessories like scopes and muzzle brakes, and on top of that you've got the addition of some new weapons in the form of 2 new automatic rifles. You've got some new clothes, a new vehicle, and now you can actually change your character's appearance in the mirror at your apartment, which is great news considering that, if I'm not mistaken, this was not even an option back at launch. Like, back at launch, once you stepped out of that character creator, you could no longer edit your character in any way, shape, or form. So it's nice to be able to go back to my apartment every now and then and change up my character's look. And we've also got some better driving mechanics so that driving doesn't feel so, I guess, slidey would be the correct word for it. Driving just feels way more responsive, whether you're on a motorcycle or in a car, and that's huge because you will be driving a lot from point A to point B in this game. And then if you are on one of the new consoles, you'll also be seeing improvements to how NPCs interact with each other and how they react to you. So now when you fire a shot in the middle of a crowd, people will react by screaming and running away. Cars peel off in an attempt to escape the situation. It's really a bunch of little things that make the game seem more realistic and add immersion, which is really nice to see, honestly. All in all, I think this patch is a massive step in the right direction for CD Projekt Red. Obviously, there's still bugs, and they'll still be ironing those out over time, as well as adding new content, DLCs and whatnot. But now that we have a true next-gen patch for Cyberpunk, people can finally, confidently hop in and make up their own minds about this game. But what do you guys think? I mean, what are your thoughts on Cyberpunk? I know we're talking about the next-gen patch right now, but have you played it before the patch at all? And if so, leave a comment and let me know what your experience was like. Leave a like if you liked the video, and please remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell if you're enjoying the content and want to stay up to date on all my latest videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.